hello, and welcome to the Thursday deep dive for At the Mic. I am your host, Keith Malinak. There we go. Got all my buttons pushed and everything's good, and we're ready to go now. Wow, thanks for making time. If you missed yesterday on the Wednesday wildcard, we went through the most underappreciated battles in world history. If you missed that, I hope you will go and check that out. And I will say, Stephen Stoneman, I see you. Great message you sent me about the Battle of Cowpens in South Carolina, I believe it was, yes. During the Revolutionary War, major battle that gets no play in the history books. So that was an oversight by yours truly. So definitely, maybe we'll just do a whole show. Maybe I'll make it up, just do a whole show on that battle. So anyway, we'll get back to that at some point. So check that out if you missed it, but not before you watch today's live episode. It is 3 p.m. Eastern. And so let me just make sure that the tweet is out there. There we go. All right. It's on YouTube as well, if X isn't your cup of tea for watching live stuff. And, of course, Spotify and Apple and all sorts of places as soon as we wrap up here today. Now, I booked this show months ago, looking ahead. I saw, 6 months out from the midterms, I have to have Jovan Pulitzer back here. This will be our 6th conversation. We've been having these very important discussions about our election system. And I have to choose my words carefully because I want to say stuff like fraud and stolen elections and stuff. But I'm just, I'm going to let Jovan handle how to describe everything. What I'll say is we're not in a good place with our election system. And you don't need me to tell you that. But it didn't just start in 2020 either. In fact, I'm going to give him a pop quiz. I just thought of this when we were getting ready to start here. I'm going to ask him. Let me just bring him up here right now. Jovan, hi. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Sure. And you don't have to answer this right now. And you don't even have to answer this at all. But I want you to tell us, if you had to pick a percentage of, and it could be 0%, but I know it's definitely not 100%. How secure was the 2020 election, would you say? How was 2024? And what are we on pace to 2028? You don't have to answer that right now, but just be thinking about that. We'll get back to that because I want to bring Eve in here, who's a great researcher who helps you out tremendously. And y'all wrote a book, and it's not within reach. I can see it, but I'm going to knock over stuff trying to get to it. Y'all wrote look at that. She's got it right there. Countdown to Chaos. And it tells you everything, what they're doing to us and how elections are being manipulated. Can I use that word, Jovan?
You sure can, because they are.
Okay, so again, I just said this is the 6th time we've talked. And I do have some specific questions, but I like to just hear what's on your mind and what's the latest before, because you may end up answering half of my questions for me before we even get started. So anyway, don't forget to follow Jovan on X at Jovan H. Pulitzer. Sign up for his newsletter. How do they do that, man?
You can find me at Jovan Hutton, my full name, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer.substack.com. Right? That's where you can find me at Substack. You can find me on most social media by my full name, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer. A few places you have to look for Jovan H. It's usually later iteration accounts where they blocked me a few times, and I finally managed to come back.
Ooh, that's not cool. Eve, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Very well. Yeah.
Very good.
You can find me at my book on Amazon.
That's right. Countdown to Chaos. There you go. Okay, kids, where do you want to start today with all the good information? I say good in quotes because I'm always terrified of the answers of the questions I ask because I don't know that it's ever good news. Where do you want to go, man?
Well, don't think, look, truth always hurts, and people hate people for some reason, and the system does specifically for people that tell the truth. And the system is designed and inclined not to get people the truth. And then the things that the system sells or tries to sell as truth, all of them come along with no proof. And the reality is you should be able to see it, document it, show it, because proof is truly the only truth. But the system does not reward truth. You're not hearing bad things when we tell you the truth of what's going on. You're hearing good things because the system wants people in oblivion and to think that other people have it. And that's part of the con. So if you reject truth or don't want to be places where you get truth, you've literally begun to turn yourself into an operative for the other side. So you have to be willing to listen to the truth. Is the reality? Are things changing and are things in process? Yes. Not like you may think they are, and maybe you can finally see it for yourself. But President Trump is marching along. We've got to get rid of the crap on the voter rolls, which is absolutely truthful. They've sued every state for him to turn them over. The normal bad states that do the nefarious things with the voter rolls aren't turning them over and fighting. And he's basically said, here it is, we're going to do it, and we got to get it fixed. Well, he had to do a little bit of a maneuver, and the maneuver was the state, you now have to certify that your rolls are clean, good, and legit, and that everybody on them is legitimate, and you have to show us how you verified that. And that was a monumental step because something they were able to skirt under a law and say, well, I thought they were real. Now they have to sign their name on the dotted line. And it means the moment they certify it, and then, of course, it will be proven a lot of them are wrong, they're criminally liable. So big things are going on.
Okay. All right. That felt okay. All right. Just dip a toe in the water here. And one of the things that as someone who really appreciates the trampled on 10th Amendment and states' rights and wanting to allow states to control everything within their borders, I guess I try to stay principled, but I guess I have an area in my brain that says, when it comes to a federal office, I feel that the federal government has a right to be involved. And so that's why I want to ask you about the SAVE Act or the Save America Act or there's a MAGA version. There's so many different of these. I don't know which one is even considered anymore. I feel like they're all dead right now. What is your take, though? Because I really appreciate your opinion when it comes to elections, and I want to get both of your takes on the SAVE Act. Are we barking up the wrong tree, or would that actually help?
Eve, go ahead first, then I'll go.
Well, my feeling on it is, and if there are people that have read the book, and Jovan and I had a conversation about, it just gets corroborated with every event that happens with all of these things. But as soon as I started watching, the attempt to get this thing passed, I just felt there was no way it was going to get passed because the system that they have in place is an exploitable system. And, over the time now watching this thing in play, I think that it's exploited not by individuals. I think it's exploited by the parties. And I think that we have backroom deals. I've often wondered, why do we have people that are able to come out 12 months before an election and say, we're going to lose 6 seats or we're going to lose 12 seats or whatever. And now I'm kind of wondering if, there's just deals and they know that they can flip certain areas. They know that they've got players in that'll cover their backs, whether it's, any of the cities that were, in play in 2020, or, you can make your top 10 list of some of the areas, but, my gut is telling me that party politics now owns the system. And I don't know that the SAVE Act ever is going to have a shot because they wouldn't give up their greatest tool.
You're right. It's almost like it's a negotiated tenure swap and they do it back and forth. That's number one. Number two is, Keith, going back to what you said, 10th Amendment, et cetera, and the states, we used to have separate federal elections. And then there were state elections, right? And so when you voted federally, you were casting a separate ballot federally. Really? When everything got pushed together to where it was one ballot, because of states' right, it actually circumvented the federal right because the state could actually block it. Why? Because your federal vote is right there with the state vote, but it's ostensibly the same people, and therefore they don't want to turn over state information. I would be totally fine if we went to 2 separate ballots and you had a state election and then you had a federal election that was administered at the state level, but still under federal control. Now, I don't want to federalize the elections. That's kind of what they did by taking them over. I don't want federalized elections. That's something different. But when they merged that together, it became far more difficult, because when you get to the division of the states, then it's actually going to be hostile and party-like, that they're going to run their politics. Now, you've seen what President Trump is doing with the new Supreme Court ruling that allows no racism in the decision of the districts, which means it should have no regard to the amount of melanin you have in your skin. Tennessee, just before we came on the air, voted their state according to what they really are, and they're all red, not any blue. So I think they've been using some of these tricks to get blue cities headlining, and then they began working on the state and the areas, and then it turn them to the purple haze, and then eventually get them over to blue. That's what's been going on. Now, will the SAVE Act save us? No. There are blinding holes in the SAVE Act. Laws are not designed to save us. Our laws have not been designed to save us for a very long time. Our laws are designed to placate us. And that's a sad state of affairs. And because Americans don't care, don't dive deep, and don't understand what's historically going on, you think in words, you're hearing the ways to fix it. And when you really look at it from rule of law, you find the very words they used are the words that are the ones that allow the wiggle room to get it done. And I'll give you a prime example. You have CISA, right? Saying they protect cybersecurity and everything else, and we set the rules for that. Then you have the Election Assistance Commission, and the Election Assistance Commission basically governs the election, make sure they run right, and they're with the Help America Vote Act and the Voting Rights Act and all this stuff. But if you actually read the words, you would find out it has glaring things in it, like following the rules of elections are 100% voluntary voting guidelines. And then when you read it from there, you go, damn, it's voluntary. And they say the states have a voluntary statute to voluntarily follow our guidelines. You read down to the state level, and all they say is we follow the EAC guidelines for running elections, which you go back and read the EAC. It says all of the rules regarding security, everything else are voluntary. In that, there's no enforcement in this system, and that's why we can't keep on focusing on the machines in Venezuela and Serbia and all. It doesn't matter. It just does not freaking matter, because if someone steals an election in Venezuela, you can't prosecute them in the United States for something that happened in Venezuela. And by the way, even the most idiot of idiots know that, and there is no jurisdiction. So why does it matter here? It's total crap to get people away from the real stuff, which, by the way, President Trump is working on with the voter rolls, now switching it to have the teeth it has, because it's technically not illegal to mismanage the rolls. It's just a fiduciary duty that's mismanaged, but to turn it into a true crime where they're adding it, now those teeth are coming in. But at the same time, you got the pillows that suffocate America going out there telling people, oh, don't do that. It's the machines. It's that. They put people on 900 city tours who claim, I'm broke and I can't do this, but somehow they get around to 900 cities in the United States telling people the same drivel. And the drivel is to keep people in elections away from what 100% allows us to currently prosecute under felony, federal and state. But they want you to stay away from that, because part of this system works this way by keeping you dumb and numb.
I feel like I should mark through my Venezuela question I was going to get to later.
No, ask it. No. For everybody to learn, ask it.
Sure.
Because if, in fact, you have a question about Venezuela, just let me answer it. Let people learn, because people have the same question, especially when you see thought leaders or supposed leaders in election integrity telling you, well, we caught Venezuela. Anyway, go. Why don't you get it out of the way?
Right, I'll get it out of the way. Sure. Okay, so because you and I haven't talked in a while, and we haven't talked since that raid in early January of this year that brought Nicolas Maduro to New York, and basically turned over leadership of that country. And of course, something that's been sticking in the craw of a lot of folks' minds since the 2020 U.S. election is, hey, was there a Venezuela connection? Was Hugo Chavez involved? And, what's the story there?
So Hugo Chavez personally wrote the code. I hear that he went to eat. No. I hear that he went. Not only is he excellent at code.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy's a freaking genius.
Clearly.
I cannot believe that dictator came to the United States, sold these systems into 50 states, 3,300 counties, 175,000 precincts. Man, this is some connective tissue bullshit.
See, I asked the question so y'all don't have to.
Well, no, come on.
Any connection whatsoever? Do you think that the raid had anything to do with some comeuppance for the 2020 involvement with
nothing?
Venezuela?
Nothing whatsoever.
Okay.
Nothing, not a stitch or whatever. It had to do with the fact that that country destabilized us, and it is the route that sends in the most terrorists to our nation. They're coming through there, so they stage it with Venezuela, and then they come north to Mexico. People tend to think that the illegals are coming from Mexico. That is not true. That's basically stemmed. They're coming up through Venezuela, where they're staged, paid, and led. And in order to stop that bleeding, which is horrendous, from 2008 to 2024 early, there were about 12 million some odd illegals that flooded into London, the UK. Now you saw the UK fall. Mm-hmm. What people don't realize is during the Biden administration alone, first one I told you was through Obama period to the beginning of 24. For the Biden administration alone, they led that many people in. They let them in, gave them apps, gave them money getting here. So that really has nothing to do it. Now, are people making hay with it? Okay, great. Let's play this out. A software engineer in Venezuela rigged the software election for Maduro and put him in. So we must go arrest him. What's wrong with that picture of something that happened in Venezuela? And then you look closely. You want to be pissed about the machines. Well, wait a minute. We did it. They did the machines. Well, the machine's not the software. That's two different things. But it's a crime. They rigged the election. And how do we know? Because we have 3 CIA former whistleblowers. Well, I want to let you know, there is no such thing as former CIA. That's the first thing that should tip you off to this. Yeah. Isn't it interesting? All these CIA whistleblowers, real whistleblowers in the CIA disappear. They don't come forward. And, oh, by the way, this is still this bullshit trick in the book, and I'm sorry, but, I was CIA, I was former CIA, CIA can't confirm or deny. And a lot of these people that they prop up as former CIA guys were actually intelligence guys writing reports that would come out of the CIA for other groups, usually lobbying groups, usually NGOs, etc. So they're not really a CIA asset. It's the stupidest crap in the world, because even if somebody was a mass murderer in Venezuela, and there's been many, the United States cannot prosecute, and it does not matter what the crime is. Now, if Venezuela comes here and bombs us, sure. Comes to our country and kills people, sure. But folks, you're smarter than that to believe that crap.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, Jovan, because again, to just play devil's advocate, even if somebody came forward and said, listen, I can prove this or whatever, you can't prove it. It is unprovable. There is no way that you can take that allegation and prove it to any extent that it is submissible in a court of law.
That's right.
Yeah, and can I just also say that I feel that since this is my 6th class that I've attended with you, I feel like the takeaway is it going to be on the quiz that it's ballots and time, right? Did I get that right? Because you just described the influx of humanity. I mean, that's going to eventually generate ballots, right? And then if you stretch out the the election period, the early voting. I mean, hell, in Michigan, I think it was started early September or something last 2024. You got time to get in there and engineer the result you're looking for. So it's not as, I guess, high tech. It doesn't need to be as high tech.
It's very low tech.
It's right.
It's exceptionally low tech. By the way, Maduro, what he was indicted on was called narco-terrorism conspiracy. That's what he was indicted on. And they were able to track down $50 million that had changed hands. The only things that have any rules down there at all, but with no conviction, is the bribery of government officials. None of them have ever stuck. So there aren't cases technically of prosecution in the United States for Venezuelan crimes or any other country for that matter.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Well, I mean, hell, that sounds like a nice segue into China. You want to talk about China real quick? Because I have a story here with the headline, "Declassified doc confirms China did, in fact, breach U.S. election security leading up to the 2020 election."
I want you to read that headline again, if you would, please.
"Declassified doc confirms China did, in fact, breach U.S. election security leading up to 2020 election."
Okay, so first off, what do you think that is saying?
Well, it's declassified. So now it's available for all of us to inspect.
Okay, no. Read the headline. We know it's declassified. In the headline, they stated the crime. What
breach
is
U.S. election security?
Okay,
the crime. Or
okay, so yeah,
is that a crime?
Read the headline again.
I hate being in front of the class.
No, it's okay. I mean, you're the
thoughts,
surrogate. Man. You have the article. You want to know. People aren't looking at the headline unless you want to put it on your screen. The headline specifically
here it is.
Says, right? Uh-huh. The headline specifically says declassified docs, right? Uh-huh. You're talking about this, confirms, right? Confirms China did, in fact, I'm going to read again. Yeah. Declassified doc confirms China did, in fact, breach U.S. election security leading up to the 2020 election. One more time.
What do we do with that?
This is the Gateway Pundit. Declassified doc confirms China did, in fact, breach U.S. election security leading up to 2020. Now, what they talk about is a document, right, that proves this. Now, that document is put out, is actually an official document. It was declassified. It's from the National Intelligence Council. It's an assessment, NICA Assessment 2020 number bulletin 2007. Now, that headline says it confirmed China breached our elections. Am I right or am I wrong?
That's what it said.
Okay. So this was put out by Avril Haines, who is now head of DNI. It was officially declassified. I could go through it and give you a lot of mumbo jumbo in this. It's an authentic document. You can now find it right now in the Department of Justice. You can download it for yourself. It's heavily redacted. It's 7 pages. Here's what it says in totality. Keith, one more time. Read the headline.
Oh, already chucked it to the floor. I'm sorry.
Oh, come on.
Game on me. Declassified doc confirms China did, in fact, breach U.S. election security leading up to the 2020 election.
Okay. So, number 1, it is an official document. Number 2, it's absolutely authentic. Number 3, he did declassify it. And here's what he declassified. Russia and China both have been working to develop more tools to infiltrate the United States of America any way they can. Now, first off,
you would be a derelict government if you weren't trying to get into the systems of other countries.
There you go. They have an obligation to do it. Okay? Obligation. And so what this document says is 2 things. First off, 90% of the document says they are building up and they could do something.
A lot of qualifiers there.
You gotta remember, You got to read the document. People will take that as a headline from the Gateway Pundit. But also remember, I think the Gateway Pundit has a stake in this. Why? They backed Mike Lindell. It's China, China, China. They did all the promotion for the Cyber Symposium, so they want it to be China. So let's dive into this document. Let's go past the fact that they're building up, of course, it's espionage, and they could do something someday. Let's go back and look at what they said they actually did in 2020. Get ready. They say, quote unquote, this term, they probably conducted cyber attacks in 2019. They probably conducted cyber attacks in 2019. And they said, we know this because both China and Russia are running hacking groups. Duh. Both Russia and China are hacking foreign media and journalists. Duh. Foreign hacking groups that they pay are hacking into the NGOs. Duh. And these companies, Russia and China, are stealing personal data. Duh. So we try to get to the part of the elections, right? We try to get to the part of the elections. Okay. And basically, you got this trending poll that believes China stole election voter registration data. Well, one part of it is it's never been confirmed that it was actually done. Nobody's ever confirmed it, and that's a break in the system. But basically, it says, well, Beijing could exploit this. Yes, they could. But you know what this report does not say? Anywhere in this report, read the headline again. Don't tell me you threw it on the floor.
No, it's right here. It's right here, man. Declassified doc confirms China did, in fact, breach U.S. election security leading up to 2020 election. I swear, I haven't done this much repetition since I was in detention in middle school, man.
It's
I'm
good.
going to remember this forever.
Buckle up, baby. You're going to have to write it on the blackboard. Here it is. Ready? Here it is. Ready? This document does not say or assert that Russia or China hacked the 2020 elections. Voting machines, vote tabulations, ballots, election infrastructure, or changed votes at any time. Period.
Jovan,
Nowhere appears in that document. Go.
are you looking at the declassified doc at the moment?
Yes, I am.
Look at the date at the top, the date it was declassified, please, and what date on 2022?
Pull it up. It was declassified October 5th, 2022.
October 5th, 2022. Do you know what's happening in 2022? They are trying to cover their rear ends because they've just basically stolen this election. And so they've got to continue. Right. As I read the declassified document, it reads as a group of people trying to fortify an argument against Donald Trump.
It's Russia collusion.
Exactly what Jovan said. There's nothing new in the document. And what's significant is the date. The date of declassification is October 2022. They're coming up on a primary year, and they have to fortify their argument.
Mm-hmm. Look, it's all smoke and mirrors. But here's what you need to understand. You could have read this document yourself, folks, but because it appeared on the Gateway Pundit, who regularly does this, by the way, and Cyber Symposium got all the data, PCAPs regularly does this. They bank on people not reading. And they have a vested interest in it's the machines, just like the system, just like the parties, just like everything else. Well, just because you can, by the way, Keith, I'm going to give you a test. Ready?
Oh, no, I'm not good at tests.
Do this.
Oh, no.
Do this kind of like you're holding a gun.
Okay.
Do this like you're pulling a trigger.
Why am I doing that?
Holy schmackers, you can murder somebody.
Oh,
you just prove it. You could hold a gun and you could murder somebody. That's how asinine this crap is.
I want to give both of you a tremendous compliment. I mean this sincerely. This is why I love having y'all on, because and the same about just what I do here in general. I'm not looking for hype and a grift or anything like that. I'm looking for the truth, and I'm so grateful that it would be so easy to just get on here and just throw out a bunch of red meat not supported by facts. And so I really appreciate the fact that both of you guys do such an amazing job at digging deep and just revealing truth wherever it goes. I am going to ask your opinion though coming up though on something. So let me know if you're ready to answer this. I'm going to get answers from both of you.
Let me give you a formula. So they released a document at the Gateway Pundit, which you can see and download. You know what the first thing you should do? Don't believe anything that was said. Search the document. And most people don't know this. Did you know you can take that document, download it? It's going to hit your computer as a PDF. You can turn around and go to Grok AI. You can say, Grok, can you verify this is actually a real document in the correct format? Post a PDF and ask it to analyze for you. And Grok will come back and tell you, yes, that is an authentic document. It is redacted. Nothing's been changed. We can compare it to the files, blah, 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 blah. So at least you know you're dealing with an authentic document first. I can't tell you how many times we've come across this stuff and they're faked documents. So the first thing you do, which people do not do, is they don't check if the document's authentic. The next thing you do is read the document. And by the way, just in case you don't think you read or pay attention very well, you can ask AI, what did you learn from this document? And then you can say, well, here's the headline that goes with it. Is this headline correct?
Yeah.
It'll tell you. And you can do that with 23 different AI agents. But see, people don't do that because we have short attention span theater. Oh, I was right. I cried on my pillow all night, and here it is. It's true. The Chinese did it. I saw it on TV. Folks, it's a con. It's a con. And when you don't dig, you know what you do when you don't dig? You ultimately end up digging our own hole as America. Knock it off.
Yeah. And I want to put out an extra point to that is when you run stuff through AI, it's awesome when you can say, like, explain this to me like I'm in 10th grade. Explain this to me like
Wait a minute.
5.
Why would you ask it to explain it like 4 times your learning level? That's weird.
Wow.
That's like really weird. Why would you do that?
Shots
and this
fired.
Is about not misleading people.
Mm-hmm. So, and the other thing, I would highly recommend running legal documents through Grok or your AI of choice and ask it specific questions. Say, if I sign this, does this prevent me from such and such? Will this allow me to still blah, blah, blah? And it will give you, it cuts through the legalese, man.
You can bind your AI agents. You can now take up to 50 AI agents, bind them together, and basically say, run every one of them. I want to see a comparison of every AI agent. I want it synthesized down to what's true that all of them can agree on that's true. It's amazing what you can do with it if you use it correctly.
Because I only get 4 agents on Grok. How do you get all these other ones to work together?
Well, I'm in a special club.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to show you offline. It's fairly complicated, but you can bind them all together.
But I was going to say that doing some research, it lies to you to please you. So
they'll lie to you in a heartbeat. In fact, ChatGPT is liberal, Grok is conservative.
Yes, yeah. And they're doing it to think that it's to please you. And in my other real job that I have, I asked it a question I already knew the answer to, but I wanted to expand the knowledge base. And I asked it a question and it came up with some answers. And I went and checked and I said, wait a minute, this is not even close to true. And I put it back to it and it said, oh yeah, that's right. And then it put 2 more answers to me and I checked and it also wasn't true. And I said, you're playing statistics here. These are not true. And it came back and says, you're right. So the whole time it was just trying to please me.
You have to neuter your AI agent. Mm-hmm. And most people don't know how to do that. And the first 2 neuterings you do is you forbid your AI to use Wikipedia, which is total crap, and you forbid your AI to use personal opinion blogs.
Do you have to tell it that every time?
No, you can hard program it in. Tell it to remember it and tell it to play it back to you and confirm that this is a permanent directive. You've got to get rid of Wikipedia and you got to get rid of personal opinion blogs. Am
I being too sensitive? Grok, I felt talked back to me this morning when I asked it something. I didn't like its answer, and I said think harder. Like I typed think harder, didn't click it, and it said no. I've already thought harder.
I had this. Yeah,
Slow
I had
your
this.
roll, Grok.
No, it doesn't. I had this argument when I'm doing research. I'm doing this special series on my locals on everything you need to know about Islam, and it's 60 plus hours of lectures, right? But it's very topical. This morning was how Muhammad was able to marry a young girl that was actually the wife of his son. But anyway, every time the responses would come back when I'm verifying certain stories, every time it said, well, that was Muhammad the prophet, and in quotes, praise be to Muhammad, right? Praise be the prophet. And I wrote back, I said, are you Muslim? And it says, no, I'm not Muslim. And I said, well, every time you mention Muhammad, you're saying praise be to Allah and praise be to Muhammad, the prophet. I said, that is not standard. And it says, well, it's respectable when you're respecting a religion. I said, I'm a fucking Jew and I ask Christian questions and you don't do that shit. So what the hell are you doing praising Allah?
Wow.
Right?
Who was
and
this?
I made it justify it, and I forbid it ever to do that, because I said, you are endorsing one religion over the other, and you're supposed to be agnostic, and this is horseshit. And I better not ask you about Muhammad again and have you say, praise be to Allah and Muhammad. Peace be with the prophet. I said, knock it off.
Which AI did that to you?
Well, it was both. It was ChatGPT and Grok.
What the hell?
And I lit up the airways with Elon and say, do you realize what these programmers are doing? They're actually doing praise and kowtowing. And after you look at the definition, I made Grok look at the definition. Why do you say that? And the reason why you say it is you are acknowledging the Muhammad, the prophet, is higher than anything that's ever been here on earth. And you must say that to honor him. That's exactly why you say it. And Grok's feeding me this crap.
Yikes. Yeah, a good point there by kitty lovers. Yeah, I don't know if I'd say Grok is 100% conservative, but I would say that ChatGPT is definitely much more liberal than any of the main ones.
You can tell them to focus on provable facts without a political lens at all. But you have to understand what you're asking and how to ask it. You have to tell them, I do not want this through a political or diversity, equity, or inclusion lens at all.
Can I redirect for a second, Keith?
Mm-hmm.
So back to this declassified
objection. Well, if we're using law rules.
Overall. So the contents of that declassified document, if you go back and you look at the Durham investigation, it's the same stuff that they were trying to introduce to all that. And it's the same stuff, that whole thing that the grand jury stuff that they're putting together down in Florida, where they created, a narrative, and it's corroborate. Basically, it's an extension of what we saw in Durham, and hopefully they get it taken care of. But they knew the entire time the thing was false. I mean,
it's 18 of the 20 agencies also involved in this same stupid memo.
So the fact that they would declassify something, I mean, nothing in the memo on its face is false, but the reason they declassified it was part of the narrative they knew was false.
Well, I think this is where people have the deception that when things are declassified, somebody fought to get it declassified. No. They declassify it because they want it out in the public, and they want you to think it's important, and it supports their narrative.
That's why the most important thing for me on that document is the date at the header.
Okay. And I know you've got some charts, and I definitely want us to spend time with them. So I just have a couple more questions. Can I just get those out of the way, and then I'll just turn you loose?
No. You go whatever. You ask the questions, go. This is very helpful.
Okay.
And, the world moves all over the place at times. It's fine. I think people learn by having these discussions, not just going kick. So let's go.
Okay. So I sent you this article and would love your opinion on it. And the headline was, it was like one of them X articles. You can type up. It's one of those things I don't take a lot of advantage of. But it's the headline is, who hijacked the Texas 2026 Democrat and Republican primary elections? Well, wait a minute. I thought Texas had their stuff together. What's happening down here? Any thoughts?
Well, interesting. Yes, I do have thoughts. Eve, do you have any yet? You want to go on this, or should I?
Yeah,
ramble?
again, I mean, these things corroborate everything that is in this book. And I can't tell you, since this whole thing has been laid out and written, how many times I pull it off a shelf and just I go back to it because I mean, there's so much in there. I have to remind myself. And looking at the chart that Keith is referring to, it absolutely corroborates it is evidence of a system that is exploited.
Right.
And it is exploited for the reason to control an outcome. And Jovan proved that in what they discovered in Maricopa.
Yep.
It was a very carefully controlled outcome, and we're not meant to see it. We're meant to only believe it.
I want to, first off, this particular headline comes from not the Gateway Pundit, but it comes from Joe Hoft. He kind of has his own site now called the Joe Hoft, which I think is what it's called, right?
I think that's right.
JoeHoft.com. And he's doing an article where it basically talks about United for Freedom. And United for Freedom is another one of these election integrity groups of many. And it's their headline, who hijacked the 2026 Democrat and Republican primary elections. I'm going to point out a few things to you, and then I'm going to show you some charts. But first, I want to give you the meat of the matter. It is saying in the Democrat election, United for Freedom's expert analysis identified 37,039 voter IDs with oscillations. So they made up a new name. That means in and out, in and out, in and out. Means the voter ID appeared, disappeared, and reappeared multiple times during the early voting period. Then they went on to say in the Republican election, we identified 87,336 voter IDs with oscillations. They keep on going. They basically talk about they can see votes being swapped back and forth. They can see votes being changed. They see injections of being changed. They see the numbers of being changed. And then they basically show a bunch of charts. And they're saying the final analysis was 1,405,576 records. The voting records don't match this, do match this, et cetera. And here's what they say in their conclusions. When you finally get to the conclusions, the articles say 35,169 injected ballots. Now, they say that it's injected ballots where it is ballots injected for voters who had already cast a ballot. Then they say 80,903 were history changes, meaning changing of the number of ballots assigned to voters over time. Okay. They say there were 10,558 voter history deletions. These are IDs that cast a ballot that ended up not casting a ballot. And then they basically said 144,000 or 7% of the votes somehow were modified. Okay. So these are their data sets that they give new ballot, new things, oscillations, this 137,000 new ballot changes and everything else. So I need to unpack this to you in a way to separate fact from fiction, what is, what's not. So Keith, if you'll start with the first chart, I want to explain the very first time in American election history where somebody actually did the forensics of what really happens to these voters. So I'm gonna start with this first chart. Are you able to go to full screen mode? Because even an old man like me can see it. Okay, scroll back just a bit. Let me teach you how to read these votes, folks. So PCAD is Pulitzer Kinematic Artifact Detection. You have to understand, in the Arizona audit, we are not dealing with public data. This is key. We are not dealing with public data. In a full forensic audit, you are dealing with the actual certified records pre, during, and post, along with all the information you need to audit. So let me tell you how to read this. You're looking at that top first half, okay? So what we do is we go back in history and we try to look at trends to understand what really happens to these voter rolls. So this is what's called a merge-purge report. Where did they put people in? Where did they take people out? If you look at the left, they grew on average, they grew 5.72% over the 3-month period. That means their average growth rate, okay, was about 1.28%. So you got a 3-month, and then we look at the last 3-month, and then we come up with what the average is. So this precinct would grow at a rate of 1.28% a month. So this particular precinct added 241 new registrations for the 2020 period, okay? Now, if you look at, of that, what were active. Now, this precinct only had active voters in their precinct of 59.75%. So they had voters going in, but for some reason, somebody had registered to vote and then didn't vote, which we kind of find a little bit as an anomaly. We classify that as a red flag. How did they get registered to vote, but yet they're not acting on it? And then we look at what's called the purge index. They would purge about 0.98% every 5 months, or they would purge, they get rid of 0.2% of a point every month. That's the standard. You understand? So that's a year before the election, and they totally purged 37. Now, the next line down is what happened right after the election, not before, but right after the election. So before the election, where they were growing 5.72%, and right before the election, they grow big. When you look at the numbers post-election, their growth are nowhere near those numbers. The average growth is about 76%. The numbers show, if it's after election, it only grows about 164. So when you look at it, you can see these things ramp up just before the election for obvious reasons. They ramp up. Then you look at the purge index. Now, they're already purging before the election at 0.2%. That should be the standard, 0.2. Immediately after the election, bang, they start purging at 0.75%. In fact, they purged, where the time period before they only purged 37, they purged 198 immediately after the election. That's a 535% increase of getting people off the books after the election. So you see how that kind of sticks out like a sore thumb?
It's as if they've served their purpose.
They served their purpose. You're exactly right.
It's
you
time to remove them. We won the election. Now we got to get these ballots out.
We got to get the evidence off the books.
Yeah.
Now, this phenomenon occurs. We forensically validated it. But in our case, we know who they are. We know where they are. We know what the county did. We know the clerk who did it. These are their numbers. This is certified actual number data. Let's go to the second chart.
Yes, sir.
Now, you got to understand, that's the purple chart. You got to understand in this case that you've got to have a bank account of voters. Okay. So this is what we call the fungible voter report. Fungible in banking means I got one asset that I can swap for the other. We're looking at the same place. Okay. Look at the top row that's black. Right at the election, they had 4,210 assets on the books. They basically, if you look at it, tried to claim they had 3,597 active, and that for this election alone, somehow just for this election, they reactivated 230. Right? They reactivated 5.4% of their voters just for this election. Now that number's off the charts, right? So the total reactive was 3827. This kind of gives you their turnout at 64.15%. You'll notice that's not the same because they were at 59 the other. So where did that come from? It was all those people they surged in real quick, and then they dropped out. And so what they did is they still have, if you look at the purple chart on the right under inactive, they still have 9.10% of their precinct that they could use at any time they wanted. This is how they cook the books and how it works. Now, if you'll go to the last chart, unless you have a question.
No.
Okay, so these are certified number from the county records, not any public data, not anything like that. There you go. Now, this is actually what happened in Maricopa. And you can zoom it all the way up to where you just show District 1 and 2. It gets the point across, right? Just so they can see the readings. Okay. When you look at how many mail-in ballots should have come in 2020, those that are legal by the books, folded on the machines and sent, should not have exceeded 84.13%. But you can see there's 5 districts. Every one of them failed miserably. They didn't have the folded ballots. You look over at the hand-folded ballots, which is the walk-in, it shouldn't have exceeded 7.53%. But where they failed double digits on the left, between hand-folded and no-fold, flat ballots, election day and stuff, they make up to 100%. Those are the inserted ballots. And in order to insert a ballot, you have to have a person. Now let's go back to this story, okay? Mm-hmm. So the story that's being United for America, right? And that 693,000 voter history changes, or 66,146 voter history deletions, or 35,772 injected ballots, or 87,336 oscillations. Now, Joe Hoff carried this, and I'm going to go back to the headline. Who hijacked the Texas 2026 Democrat and Republican primary elections? The only thing of all of these numbers, even if they make up terms like oscillation, that's like in and out of reality, right? The only thing on everything they claim that actually has any material fact, okay, is 35,169 injected ballots. I want you to write that down for a minute, folks, and just put that there. But 35,169 injected ballots. Now let's go backwards. They basically tell you in this report that according to their work, that they were able to find 37,039 voter oscillations. That means the voter ID appears, the voter ID disappears, the voter ID reappears, sometimes multiple in the data. Okay, and they say 26,480 of one of these had a ballot in at the end of early voting. So let me ask you a question. What is the crime there?
Well, let's see.
Technically, there's no crime, but there is an indication of nefarious activities. Now, there's a reason I'm going through it this way. If they're required to maintain the voter rolls, is there a realistic chance that voters get added in, yes or no? You're the jury. Yes, there is. If they're required to maintain the voter rolls, there's a realistic chance that voters get deleted. Yes. Could there be a chance that they did a voter wrong and they said they were gone and they took them out, realized the error, and put them back in? The answer is yes. Could a voter dropped out of the system, moved to another county, and moved back in and gave them another voter ID because that's the protocol for moving back in? The answer is yes. Now, the moral of the story is not that nothing was done wrong here. The moral of the story is these numbers look great, and this is a bad area. I can even show it and audit it. But the bottom line is you got a couple of things that are wrong here. That's public data. That's somebody going to the state, pulling down a list of voter rolls, and running a program on it. It's not confirmed voting data. That's the difference. Yes, it's a strong indicator, like I've always said, the voter roll is the key. It shows that they're in and out of this stuff all the time. But the headline makes you think it was during the election and the early voting. There's no way they could have had that data during early voting. Now, the next thing they tell you is that there's 37,000 39 oscillations in and out, in and out. Well, we can explain that happen, but here's the real kicker. Out of 80,903, they say vote history changes. Look, we did this in 2020, Bobby Piton and myself, and showed it. We brought people in, put them down in front of the voter rolls, and we say, tell us when you voted. They would tell us when we voted. We went back into the rolls. And places where they said they didn't vote, this is in 2020, it's 2026 now. They go, I didn't vote then. I know I didn't vote then. So this 80,093, this is another key indicator, an absolute key indicator that they mucked with their voter rolls. And these guys are absolutely correct. We proved this years ago. However, is that a crime? No. Because, see, the county can change or rewrite the voter rolls at any time. And because there's not a law about they can't change it, there's literally not a law they can't change it. They have the right to change it. They can say, oh, it was just a boo-boo. So this one doesn't have any meat to it. It's very incriminating, right? It's very bad. But again, they tied this to the Texas primary. This, again, is stuff that's done with public data. They look at it. It looks freaking wonky. It looks freaking bad. It is, in fact, nefarious, but they claim it was a crime, and people go, oh, wow, that was 80,963 crimes. It was not. Okay? Then they basically said, well, out of those, 10,558 had their vote history deleted. Well, we found that too. But is that a crime? No, it's not a crime. It's a maintenance issue, which goes back to the very simple thing. You have 54 voter IDs with multiple ballots. That has meat in the 35,169 injected ballots. Now, here's the point, okay? In this whole report, when you read the report, and I'm giving you the analyzation of what's true, what's real, what's not. Big numbers, sounds great. They try to get people to read and click. Joe Hoff and these guys fluff this all up to thump their chest. That's fine. But if we're going to fix this, we have to have prosecutable evidence, right? Prosecutable evidence. Now, they lead, but they bury the story. They lead with voter ID, voter ID, voter ID, voter ID. And if you can prove an individual voter voted multiple times, or they faked the voter and put it in, and here's the ballot. See, the ballot is the crime. Well, they said there were 37,000 of them or whatever it was, right? That were inserted in. 35,772 inserted ballots. Here's the deal. What ballots?
See, Keith, can I just interrupt just for a moment? Because this is the thing. This is the thing. It's kind of like in Back to the Future, where they've got to put the two ends of the plug together, and it's stuck, and you can't get them to get right. So one end of the plug is the accusation that you've got all this stuff. The other end of the plug is the paper. And until you get access to the paper to audit the things at the precinct level, you're never going to get the two ends of the plug together. And the only time that was done was in Maricopa, and they ignore the actual evidence. And I'm trying here locally. It's driving me absolutely mental. I am so close.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to look at the paper. You have to be able to look at the process. And until you can show exactly what happened through every step of the way, you do not have a case.
No. See, that she's got it right. That's the whole issue in every bit of this. When they claim there's 35,000 whatever injected ballots, at the end of the day, they are not claiming they have video. They are not claiming they have confessions. They are not claiming they have direct proof of who did it. They are simply stating, in our opinion of the data we looked at from Texas election records available, they don't give you the ballots and the IDs together. This is what we think happened. That's the material difference in every bit of this. A lot of people play for these incredible headlines. And if, in fact, they could show that 35,772 ballots were actually inserted, that's 35,772 state felonies. But see, the deal is, in it, even though they're leading with voter IDs, which means you have a name, in that case of even looking at the cast vote records, you don't know who cast that ballot. And this is where I think it frustrates the process, because they're clearly saying, and I agree with it, that the voter rolls are wildly manipulated, but they got to go at it the right way to shut it off. But even when they can show these files changes, and then they make the claim there's 35,772 ballots in, okay, let's say there were fraudulent ballots. Which ones? Who did it? And that is the threshold by court you have to have. Okay, which are the 35,772 ballots that are fraudulent? Even if you could identify them, the actual ballots, right? And you pull it out, then you got to go, who voted them? And you can't, because they're always separated from the voter ID and there's no way to track it. Go back to the orange chart that you'll put on screen. And I'm going to explain the difference here. Okay? Literally, this is where you have to use the system against itself. Let me just use this line number 1. Then the top brown line, it's the district, and it shouldn't see. So let's look at machine folded. What is a machine folded ballot? It's in color on official paper, printed by the official balloteer, okay? And it is folded on an exact location that it fits properly in the envelope, and it's folded in a manner, it gets pressed on several times. That's how we read the folds. Now, if you look at all the turnout, it should not, for any reason in any of these precincts, exceed 84.13%. But if you look at District 1, they came in at 76.24%. So you got to ask, well, where are the other differences? Then you move over to handfold. What is a handfold ballot? You didn't mail in, you mail in. You walked into early vote, right? You walked into early vote, and they handed you a paper ballot. It's not in color. That's the first thing we look at. And then when you fold it back, it's just like folding a letter. You fold it the way you want to fold it, and it's never on that machine line, and it's never perfect. Well, you see how many much more. They had what, 30 plus percent or 20 plus percent more hand-folded ballots than they even claimed by law. Then you go over to no folds. No fold are election day ballots. They're flat and provisionals. You see there, look how much more they had there. Mm-hmm. See, in that scenario, we don't have to prove who did it, and we don't have to prove even who the vote was for. And you know why we don't have to do that? Because it's only based on the paper, and the paper tells the truth. And so you can lay them out. Here's the machine fold. Here's the hand fold. Here's the paper fold. Audit them all. You can see the numbers for yourself. How do we identify hand fold? Here you go. Get it?
Sure. So
it self-identifies.
Yeah.
But when you claim, well, we got the voter rolls and it was this, and we think 35,000 ballots were injected, this is what kills all of our work because you can't prove it. And at the end of the day, your statement is, we think, we don't have any evidence, we don't have video, we don't have confessions, we don't have direct proof, but everybody out there is trying to think who can do the best statistical analysis in. And by the way, you can't convict somebody on statistics and opinion.
If I may, Jovan, and I think I can drop this name because it's really insignificant, but a great example of this, and I'm not going to say the race, but there's a gentleman named Russ Ramsland. He came from Texas. And he would go out on all kinds of different shows and whatever. And he would say, I can prove that this precinct was fraudulent. And I can prove that look at this screams fraud. And I will tell you that I looked very specific. I looked at 3 precincts that he made these outrageous claims about. And he was dead wrong because those precincts were exactly what they were supposed to be. I found plenty of things in other places, but he didn't have the paper. I did. And he was absolutely wrong. And it just
hurts.
It really, really hurts because you know what happens is then you get people like the Washington Post chasing after this stuff, uncovering that it's a big, fat, stupid narrative that doesn't, the ends of the plug don't go together. And it just hurts the truth in reality.
This is why we have to have standards. Even in election integrity, which shouldn't be a business, and people are getting into business doing it. And I still don't understand why Mike Lindell had multiple teams, maybe 6, but they all ran under different names, playing like they were different groups, and it was all the same group operating under different names. And they're all kind of doing the same little daisy chain fairy tale. What's this and that? It's just like this article. 35,000 inserted ballots. Well, if we had inserted ballots like we were able to show in Maricopa, which they avoid like the freaking plague, right? And we can show it down to the date and timestamp and exactly which machine it ran through. That's what you do in forensics. You have it. Here it is. But to keep on making these claims, and everybody thinks it's a war of math and analogies and analysis. It's not. It never has been. It must be based solely on prosecutable proof. Now, I think the quote unquote system, the parties, I think they hold this up. They want people repeating these numbers. They want to hold up experts that aren't experts. I call these guys, said, hey, look, come on, let's talk about it. Show me how you arrived at the math. All of them avoid me like at the plague because it's not proof. I think the parties hold this up because they need people confused. They need people to think that this is being worked on. But let me ask you a question. Let's go back to Carrie Lake's trial in 22. One of the witnesses that was put on the stand by counsel was a public pollster. Now, I want you to think about that for a minute. Well, how do you know these ballots were fake and it was crap? Well, we asked this many people coming out and they said they did this. We asked this many people coming out and they said they did this. We did the numbers. Here's what it was historically been. And so this is what it was. Can you put somebody in prison because of a pollster's testimony?
Oh, no.
You can't. And so this has all been a big bullshit public charade.
Yeah. And let me just, a little housekeeping here real quick. I will post on my X account if anyone wants to go, just an easy one-stop shop. I'm going to put links to all 6 of the conversations that Jovan and Eve and myself have had on this topic for the last, what are we going on, kids? 2.5 years now, maybe 3 years. So in the first episode is where you demonstrated the forensic evidence of those ballots in Arizona. And it is jaw-dropping. It is fascinating, and it's also depressing. No, but I mean, it's
forensics is forensic.
Yeah.
And if we can put a man in jail for a single hair or a single footprint or thumbprint, which basically is irrefutable by DNA, not statistics, matchable DNA, we can bring the same thing to elections, but we also have to focus where the crimes are. Nothing on the machine is a crime. Nothing technically with the software is a crime. It's only a boo-boo, mismanagement. They're all voluntary. But you screw with that ballot. And these guys said there's 35,772 ballots. Show me the ballots.
Show you the ballots. Okay, I got 2 other things that have been in the news lately. I always see pop up with regularity Michigan and their voter rolls. Obviously, that was a hotbed of contention for the last 2 elections at least. Anything good, positive coming out of that?
Well, the post you're talking about was put out by Patrick Kolbach, who I know, used to be a lawmaker there. He fancies himself an election integrity expert. He's now Mike Lindell's right-hand man. My interaction with Patrick is right after we were already started in the Maricopa audit, I and another person agreed to fund the entire Michigan audit because it needed it. They swore they could get the ballots. We were probably going to put up about $2 million to get started. It was going to be a very big project. All the lawmakers got in the room, the people running, the people there, whatever, and they started fighting over who's going to get to be in the press, who's going to talk to the press, and who's going to handle the money. And they said, okay, if y'all going to do it, you give us the $2 million, we'll raise the rest later, which I basically told the other party, I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. They're fighting over who's going to get cred. Then when they asked the GOP in Michigan to participate, here's what the GOP in Michigan said. You're going to need about 250,000 signatures, and I may be off some of the numbers. You're going to need about 250,000 signatures. We'll get you the signatures if you'll pay us $20 million. That's when I knew all hope was lost in Michigan of really getting things done, because they just war with each other. So I knew there was kind of no hope in getting it there. And so, yeah, Patrick many times keeps on releasing information, and here it is. Here's the proof. In order to show the crime, you've got to show how they did it and who did it. All day long, these numbers look funky. Inserting voters in, taking voters out, not cleaning the rolls. They're all guilty of it. They're all guilty of it. We know it happens. It's nefarious. But until you're able to show who did it and how they did it, you can't do anything. So here's the issue with the voter rolls. And Pat Colbeck's a big part of this because I'm sitting down with President Trump, right? I'm freaking sitting there in his office by invitation. Show me what's going on. What do we do? Wasn't a 2 or 3 or 4 minute meeting. It was a 96-minute meeting, uninterrupted. And I'm explaining this, and I told him, we got to get rid of the voter rolls. That's where it is. And he says, well, maybe I can do this when I'm elected. And I'm in this and that and whatever. And from behind me came a voice says, well, we're told we can't do that. Well, that was Susie Wiles, chief of staff. That's fine. If President Trump trusts her, that's his choice. But she had been politicked for months by Lindell's team, which Patrick Colbeck's number 2. And they convinced her, don't do anything with the voter rolls because it's like sweeping a dirt floor. You can't do anything. And then Mike put his Cause of America guy, Colonel Sean, on the road with Turning Point USA, every lawmaker in the room listening. And he says, don't mess with the voter rolls. It's like sweeping a dirt floor. Well, you see President Trump is fighting for the voter rolls, get it done, and not listening to the machine stuff. But let me give you why we could have dealt with this years ago, but because they were believing the Lindell story, we failed. See, if they shut down because of security reasons access to the voter rolls, we have more than enough information to know that our systems in elections have been compromised, minimum breach. You know why we want to say that? Because that's what they keep on saying. All the Democrats said for years, everything was breached. It was China. So I told President Trump, embrace this. Let's just put a temporary pause on it. Now, when you put a pause on it, you can put a security measure in place that says, okay, we're going to turn off all read-write access momentarily, and we're going to give everybody new access. Now, let me tell you why you do that. In certain situations of security stuff I was working on prior to the 2020 election, I can show you places along a rail or transportation network. Let's just take a rail yard where rails are going back and forth, and you in those little bitty hubs they put on the line, you got 2 security lines watching this, 2 security guys watching status of the rail all the time. There should be 2 people on it. But when you come in and look at their systems, there's 110 people inside this system. And you ask them, who are these 110 people? And they say, well, on any one shift, it's only 2 authorized, and we only have 6 authorized total. So you tell them, shut it all down. Kick everybody out, right? Kick everybody out. And then when they see they can't do their job, they'll reach back and say, hey, I've been kicked out. Well, the 2 that were supposed to be monitoring called back and said, hey, what happened? You give them a new code, they get in. All of those illegal ones don't call back. It's like Dr. Oz with all these hospices in LA. They've cut off 435 from getting big ass checks. Not a one of them is called to ask what happened because they know they're criminals. So this happens all over the place. But using right protocol, you can do it, and you can shut off the voter rolls. When you shut them off and you make the requirement that only the county recorder can authorize rewrite and has to be tracked, well, those people start coming in under a new ID, and you're able to see everybody who has authorized access and exactly where they come from. That's why you shut it down, because you shut out all these inputs. But yet all these election integrity experts told everybody across the country, now don't worry, it's sleeping on dirt floor, it's the machines, it's melting the prison bars, and none of it got done. That's how wide open our system is, and they need that voter roll system wide open. That is why the 7 states that are horrendously bad, rigged their elections this way, basically refuse to turn over the voter rolls because they know it'll be found. That's the con. But you know what? I just gave you the uniparty con. That's how it's done. The system needs this thing open. The system needs it to be Wild West. And it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning, all of us. I think they're negotiating back and forth as they rape the system, and they frankly don't give a rat's out about us.
Honestly, it feels like that. It feels like they are just happy to be the party of opposition. Oh, if we don't win this election, fine, then we'll fundraise off of the party in power. And they use us and our emotions and say, well, look, I mean, you don't want the Democrats in power, right? So you're going to have to vote for us again. And it's not tiresome.
That's the oscillating factor, right?
It's loathsome. What are the 7 states? I hate to quiz you like that, but you said there's 7 states.
Washington, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, Arizona. Who am I missing? Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's a lot of swing states in there, man. That's okay.
Well, and let me just add to this whole thing, because again, this was uncovered in the book, but every time that you go to check in and you're at one of those e-poll books, that is one of the most nefarious parts of this system. And those things, I think 95% have connected. I found one in one state that writes their own, and they claim it's off the chain, but I'm not sure that that's true because I don't know the system. But what I want to do where I live, and hopefully I'm very close to doing it, is return to paper poll books that are fully auditable, that can match with paper and should be required to match with paper, even on the day of polling, for example. Right. And so anybody that signs signs in for an election on an e-poll book needs to start thinking, this thing needs to go away. And you need to elect people and embrace people that are on that path, because when we're moving through, and we're still fighting this, right? We think we're fighting with the SAVE Act. I just don't think that that's reasonable. I think the place that this is going to be fought and won is at the individual precinct level. Right. And, we have to, somebody asked me here, well, why would you do it here? We don't have a lot of problems here. And granted, where I live, we don't have a ton of problems, but we do. I mean, we have issues. But I said, you know what, if you go and you try to fight this battle where there's problems, i.e. a Tina Peters situation, and people know that they're going to get prosecuted and put in prison, you're not going to get down to the truth, because everybody's on defense. Everybody's afraid they're going to get prosecuted. It is far better to put this in place in somewhere where there isn't a ton of problems, where there's not going to be people that have to be worried that they're going to be going to prison. Right. Set the standard, make it something that is auditable, make it something that, is certifiable. That's the number one thing it has to be, is certifiable. And people need to begin to embrace that those things need to go away. You need to sign your name on paper, and you need to understand that your precinct should be an autonomous, right. A secure individual entity.
The poll book is the intelligence engine, Keith. Let me explain. And when people saw me testifying at the Senate hearing in Georgia in 2020, explaining what happened, basically we were able to find our way into the poll books and show it. Poll books. Now, what is the poll book? The poll books, let's just take Fulton County. You have 6,969 of them during that time. Every one of them are connected in a network. So you got 6,900 different times that if any one of them's not running security, and they have no security software on them, you can peek in and see activity of the voting. Now, what does the poll book do? The poll book says, here's everybody that's ever been registered. Goes back to the charts I just showed. Here's everybody who's inactive, but we haven't kicked to the curb yet. And here's everybody who has come in so far. Now, you understand that's the intelligence engine. If you have 7,000 voters in your precinct, the maximum numbers of votes that could possibly occur in that precinct, pop quiz, are how many? 7,000 individual ballots. That's it.
Hey, I can do that math.
Right? Now, there's 95 different votes that can occur on the ballot, individual votes for different things, but you never break the precinct. That's why precincts are so key, and they have to be no more than 2,500. Anyway, but let's say you have 7,000. Now you get towards the end of the day, right? Or you get to these counties that allow same-day voter registration. No ID, show up and pop in. What they're doing is they're manufacturing the number they need. But in order to do it, they got to get it into the voter registration database first, or they cannot do it. So if you had 7,000 and you get to the end of the night and they have now meticulously said that 4,000 people voted, what's the fungible asset left? 3,000. That means it's got 3,000 people that are on the books that if they voted, they could. Now, statistically, at the end of the night, they're not going to have them there, right? The person ain't going to show up miraculously and vote. Well, what they know is they can do all this after the fact. So they got 3,000 to use. Now they know what's needed and anywhere to adjust the numbers. They drag them from the people that did not vote. They drag them down to a vote. They have to get a ballot in, which they do insert that ballot in, but now they fictitiously tied it to a person but they do have to have the ballot. That's where the crime occurs. But see, those people that didn't vote aren't coming to look for their ballots,
Right.
because they know they didn't vote. And that's how it's done. That is the entire 100% intelligent apparatus that allows them to do it. How many do we got? What is going on right now? How many haven't come in? Okay, let's make them come in. And that's it. It's that damn simple. And when they can do that little drag, oh, they showed up. They insert the paper. They know the paper can never be matched to that person. That's how they wash it.
Well, and you start to think about the vans that show up in the middle of the night in Detroit or wherever, or like Jovan experienced in Maricopa, the boxes that weren't sealed that looked like they were rifled through, that were probably adjusted right before they were handed over.
That's
but
right.
The paper wasn't actually ever there until it was going to be counted.
They had to make it to insert it because they knew we were going to look at it. And that's why they were all jammed on top. And that's why if you go back to the chart, we caught all the numbers. See, if they ever get caught without the paper there, it's fait accompli.
Right.
And so that's why you have to push for the paper, and they scramble to insert these in. And that's why I knew I had to go to a different level of forensics.
So you remind me of another thing that we talked about in the past. Go through the process again. And I'll set you up here to shake your memory. But when you're done explaining that, I want to toss some other variable at you to see if I'm onto anything here. I'm combining two lessons here. In the past, you've said request a ballot. Correct me if I'm wrong. Get mailed to you, right?
Right.
And then you do not open up that envelope
at all.
What do you do from there?
Okay, so the way to beat this scam is the parties want to push you to mail in ballots. Even President Trump fell initially, bank the ballot, which is just mail in early voting. I corrected that immediately. Walk in. So here's the way to beat it. Request your mail in ballot and get it sent to you. It's going to be sent to you. Do not open it. Under any circumstances, do not open it. And it's actually Roger Fuller who came up with this, did great work to figure this one out. Basically, then you go down to your vote center to vote, on election day. And when you walk in, you stand about a 50-50 chance of them telling you, well, you already voted. Well, you haven't voted, right? So you ask them to confirm, wait a minute, you're saying I already voted? And they go, yes. So can you get a supervisor to show me? They'll go get a supervisor. Supervisor will come back. Yep, we got your mail-in ballot. At that point in time, you step away and you call your local sheriff, not police. Sheriff, not police. Sheriff has jurisdiction. And you say, I want to report a crime of identity theft. And you basically have them come down and file a report. Now, they're going to investigate while they're there. And then at that time period, when it happens, and they claim we show you vote, only at that time do you pull out your mail-in ballot.
Only at that time.
Only at that time. Never before. You never say you have it. Nada. But when they've confirmed it to the sheriff, nope, we showed they voted. You don't do it before. You pull it out. You never surrender it. You are not required by law to surrender that ballot. It is yours, given to you through the post office. It is your property. You say, here is my mail-in ballot. As you can see, it is not opened. I did not vote my mail-in ballot. And you file the criminal complaint for ID theft right there. And you never surrender that ballot until the police or sheriff have filed the paperwork, and they must subpoena you to get it for a court of law. And that is how we fight this on this front. But you stand a very large statistical chance in those counties, right? Especially if you're a low propensity voter, you're not voting every time it opens, that they may use you in that luck of draw and they've used your ballot. But that's how you fight it.
So this is what I wanted to add to that, because I'm glad you went through that process again. So would you recommend doing that at 6:55 p.m. on election night?
I would.
Because at some point, are they when they're sneaking in there and they're trying to insert these ballots, they're probably doing it in the last hour of
they have a higher chance that they've started already to manipulate the numbers based upon the intel they have at the later part of the day. They can't kick you out of the line, and so it's a greater statistical chance the later are in your line that it has happened.
Okay. I have a piece of news from
But you've got to get them on the record. You've got to get the person who told you on the record. You've got to get the supervisor on the record. You got to get the sheriff on the record, hearing the same thing. That way they can't backtrack it.
Right. Okay, so I'm just looking here. Something right before we went live today, I noticed the headline is Judge Allows FBI to Retain Fulton County 2020 Election Records. I guess this is is it over 600 ballot boxes? Is that right?
There should have been 7, and remember I was involved in that. It was the second audit we were going to do. There should have been 700 boxes we got a hold of.
Okay.
Because of the GOP and operatives, the full forensic audit got canned, and we didn't get it because they threatened everybody, send DNC and 1,000 attorneys in. So it gets pushed to shove and have to fight all this time, formally get it. I don't even think the ballots were there. There should be 700 boxes. FBI comes into raid. Just before the raid, the FBI, which is GBI there, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, lead called and tipped the county, and they pulled certain boxes. And so they basically pulled 69 boxes, which is the amount we knew we were really looking for, those 69 boxes. And they pulled them somehow and hit them and didn't turn over. And now they're suing to have them all go back saying, well, you don't have a right to see it. You can't do it. We got them hands down, right? But there's still a big fight over it.
Oh, where's that going to end up, do you think?
Well, it was the GOP that did it. Early on in that process, here's how it came down. And so we are fully preparing to do a full forensic audit identical to what you saw in Maricopa. The total number of ballots would have been limited because they have some that are machine voted with no ballot, and they have some that are early and mail-in, which are physical. So we're going to do the physical ballots. I have to have the physical ballot. So as we're going through this, of course, the Democrats sue that you can't turn it over and whatever, and we're in COVID and all this crap. So as I'm giving my expert testimony to the judge, I'm literally playing a little bit of a forensics game with them as all this is going back and forth. I'm demanding I need to see the absolute physical ballot because the cast vote records are a cheap copy of the ballot, and I can't do all my work from that cheap copy, which is the equivalent of a 1980 fax machine version. Now, I already knew there was a tremendous amount we could learn from those cheap ballots, right? So that gamble played off because none of these records in Georgia at the time were available. You couldn't get the cast vote records. So the judge actually allows me to look at the cast vote records to confirm that they were the low standard that I couldn't do all my work with. So the judge, I'm having to give a professional opinion. I've got to reply and explain. So I get a copy of this fob with everything on it. Unbeknownst to me, right? Now, people think Garland Favorito was really the lead there in Georgia for it. It was named instead on the front. It was other people that really had the case. Well, Garland Favorito, against our wishes, against towing the line, he was given a copy for safekeeping of these things. He handed a copy of that fob to a fellow by the name of David Cross, who kind of appeared out of nowhere. David Cross hired a coder to do what we already knew was done and we were not talking about, to run him through and found duplicates. And he decided to release it on social media to become a click star and social media star. So he releases it. He did several interviews. One was with like Bahezi and CanCon and the Lumberjack and whatever, Moser, whatever his name was. I hear that he's done an interview. I tell all the guys, stop, do not cover this. I get them all on a group call, right, which is recorded. And I'm telling you, guys, you cannot run this interview. Do not do it. You are going to shut down the entire Georgia audit. We need Georgia because it's going to confirm what happened in Maricopa. We need this. Well, the young Mohese or Mostef or whatever his name was, I don't even remember, Mosbury or whatever, started screaming and yelling at me, cussing me out. You just want to get a lead on this story. And I said, you're going to screw the audit. Knock it off. Shut up about this, because there are things you're going to tip off the opposition to. Well, needless to say, between David Cross and I wish I could remember Nick Mosier. Yeah, Nick Mosier. Two of them pulled the interviews. Mosier ran with it and spread it out. It only took 36 hours before the DNC sent in hundreds more lawyers. The judge was all ready to turn over the physical ballots, right? I knew we were going to catch the duplicates. We already knew it. But this guy, David Cross, decided to make his name on it, released it. It shut everything down. It scared the judge. All these attorneys come in and they pushed it off, kicked the can to ever. He wrote it to being an elected election chair there in Fulton County, trying to write it all the way up to the chairmanship. Luckily, the people wised up because he's the one that single-handedly stopped the audit because he thought it was about clicks. That's how underhanded I think a lot of this stuff is. You don't aid and abet the enemy. But because all of these people that never been in broadcasting and certainly don't understand forensics when you're fighting for your life, thinks it's about click and bagging rights. And I told them, they'll tell you if they told the truth. I got it recorded. You may have just nailed the coffin when it comes to what we need to even back up the Arizona audit, because you basically thought it was entertainment and going to get you known in this world of podcasting. And you screwed the entire nation at it. And here it is. They screwed the entire nation at it. Now it's finally, 5 years later from that event, and we're still fighting for it, and we may not even get it because of those games being played.
Okay, that's actually a good segue to my whiteboard question. Eve, Jovan, y'all ready to play? Give me a percentage. Okay, so here's where we're at. We're gonna look at just 20. We're gonna ignore the midterms for the moment. If you had to give a percentage in 2020, and again, it may be impossible to answer. I don't know. What would you say on a scale of 0 to 100? 100 meaning completely secure. Every vote is sacred, and we're gonna make damn sure of it. 0% is it's all fraud. Where would you say 2020 would rank percentage-wise?
Just a question. When you say all fraud or fraud was absolute, that's two different things, because you're never going to have all fraud in 175,000 precincts. Some are going to be just. What are you asking?
I don't know what I'm asking. I'm asking how comfortable are you? How comfortable are you?
The election was absolute 100% fraudulent as its net gross national scale.
I understand what you're saying. In other words, everything was exploitable. That's what I'm asking. Not every vote was fraud, but how secure is the system that we're using? All right, Eve, would you also give a 0% for 2020?
Oh yeah, I mean,
it's all exploitable. Yeah, that's a better way. Thank you, Jovan. 2024. What are we doing? We're doing okay. All right, Eve, you sticking at the 0 as well?
Absolutely, nothing's changed.
How are things looking for 2028? What are we on pace for?
Well, you want 2020. You want 2020. How about 2026?
Yeah, let's do 2026 and 2020. Well, I guess just 2026.
Barack Obama got 69 million votes, popular votes, in 2008. When he came up 4 years later, he got 65 million votes. The next one up for 4 years was Hillary. She got 65 million votes. Now, we know Hillary and Obama were the rock stars, rock star being the messiah. Then
Most
we got
popular in
Biden.
the Democrat Party.
Right. Then we got Biden, who came in supposedly 81 million votes. Then we got Kamala running against Trump. It closed the night out at 68 million votes. It's 17 and a half, almost 18 months past that election. And somehow miraculously, and the machines weren't kept running, she's now well over 75 million votes. All they did was close that gap to make the previous phony ones look good by getting them a voting history.
Yeah.
So that answers your midterms.
It
already
sure
done.
as hell does. Yeah. Oh, no. Okay. So I think we're still at 0, gang. Right, Eve?
Well, and if I may, just alarm everybody a little bit more, the system they put in place, that the book is written on, I think it was Rabbit 5 iteration of it required everything to be AI compatible. Think how many years ago that was.
Oh, no.
So now we have these systems that if you wanted to be part of the system, your system is built with AI compatibility. Now, to alarm you just a little bit more,
I don't know that that's possible.
When President Trump went in there and basically cut off CISA into having any involvement with this election. Now we've got this system in place, but we really don't have an official kind of in charge of it, so to speak. So it is out there, it is running, and it is independently running.
And it will become self-occluding very quickly.
It will be. And I will tell you for a fact that I have a spouse that's involved with very high level IT security. And he just recently had to go and take care of a county system. And they told him that the system that they had been on, that was a federally monitored system, is no longer. And they have the system in place, but they have to band-aid the monitoring. So imagine now that we've got this system where you can see all the voter rolls and you can see all this stuff. And we have a group of people that knows how to access it, what to look at, and whatever. And we now have really nobody in charge of, or there's no, I don't know. It's a wild west, and it scares the hell out of me. And it's AI compatible.
It's why the GOP raised $400 million for election integrity because of 2020, did nothing about it. Then they filed 72 lawsuits to get the paper ballots, like everybody knew from our work, get the paper ballots. They filed and delivered those lawsuits 12 hours before the statute of limitations expired. And of course, nobody got served, so they all went away, but they said we sued on all of them. They knew they needed to buy time. They let Donald Trump, and I even told President Trump this, they let Donald Trump win this last time and knew, well, let's go for the House and the Senate and cover it, which is now what you're seeing as all of this is coming online. It's why they had everybody attack Trump, tell you MAGA is dead, tell you everybody's working, going against Trump. That's why they did it, because they're going to make you believe people walked away when in fact they already do it. It was fait accompli, but that is why we say elections in America got suffocated by a pillow.
Well, and you understand now why John Thune holds the position that he does, and why everything in Washington is happening the way that it's happening. Nothing's getting done. Is they're
buying time. What did you say earlier? Ballots and time. Ballots and time.
So, Jovan, it's your contention that it's already been predetermined that we're going to have a Democrat House and Senate this fall. And then what, 2028, they were able to fudge.
Democrat House and Senate, they're going to, is the maximum that could happen. Of course, they're going to impeach Trump. They are going to convict him under the emoluments clause. Remember, he took a $400 million jet from United Arab Emirates. Mm-hmm. It's kind of foregone conclusion. I think that's what's going to happen. They are doing what's right. Thank God for the Supreme Court changing and realizing that the Voter Rights Act, they bent the words to make it racist. They bent the words to say ID was basically a poll tax. That's why they fight it. I did an entire episode on it of how it works. That one change might save certain things from becoming fait accompli. But all of the election integrity experts, all of the I infiltrated Antifa and it's the machines and it's all that with smoke and mirrors. I'm not sure that it can be 100% undone. However, I know that our evidence in Maricopa County of what was really done is the only evidence of the entire election that can be recreated that shows what happened, and it may become the saving grace when those lawsuits hit at the midterms, because they will. We'll have to play that and see. They're going to fight it for more than a year before it ever sees the light of day after the midterms. But even at the worst part, thank God we kept the archives in perfect chain of custody, because this will eventually be turned over to the Trump library. But I have to tell you, I'm exceedingly concerned.
Well, and may I ask, just say too, if there are anybody out there doing their homework and doing, their due diligence, and they happen to be a Democrat and they happen to trip over this and the information that we're talking about, this goes both ways. This is nonpartisan. And
right.
All of that stuff in Maricopa, you need to look at that. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat. You need to have a go hard look at that, because that is the facts. That is where everything.
We're all fully impugned to control us and turn us all into slaves. They don't give a rat's who, whether you're gay, straight, or anything else. They're just going to take it over, and they're going to make us serfdoms and battery power units. And by the way, they're going to do it to you, Democrats. You should care about this. It's not a popularity contest between Obama and Biden and all that crap. It's about whether America stays alive or not. And by the way, they're trying to convince you America doesn't stay alive. And there's a reason for it, because they know what they have planned.
Yeah, and AI will be our overlords anyway, so that'll work out.
It can be fixed. That too, of course, I'm immersed in that world. That too can be fixed, but it's as good as input in, input out. But that too can be fixed and self-governing, opposed to self-obfuscating, which is what it's currently doing.
But before we go here, I want to get this question up here from Crispy Critter. Can you briefly explain who Tina Peters is and where that stands? Because now Ricky Schroeder is still trying to get her.
Tina Peters is the county recorder in Mesa County, Colorado. In 2021, one of her people in her county says, "Hey, you should talk to this guy, Dr. Frank, I know." And so they introduced Tina Peters to Dr. Frank. Dr. Frank working for Mike Lindell as the data guy. He clearly stated, because it's documented in an article by the Atlantic Journal, that I was looking for a county that had no fraud, that was red, that I could prove my theory. And what was his theory? His theory was, well, I looked at the 2010 census. That's 10 years before the election. I looked at 2010 census. I did a mathematical number, and I looked at 4 counties in Michigan. That's his exact formula. And I can tell you how all 300 counties went, and all 174,000 precincts. And that became the basis of a lot of Mike Lindell crap. They introduced them to Tina Peters. Tina Peters met with them and basically said, there's nothing wrong with our county. They said, no, there's something wrong. And she says, I'll ask for the records. She couldn't get the records. And he said, well, if you can't get the records, don't worry. We have people that can do it. Somehow that mysteriously got recorded. So guys come in, all the same crew, and they extract that stuff from Tina, who didn't think anything was wrong and was not asking for help. And they do it in a way that magically Tina gets whisked away to this cyber symposium, which is announced a month before we're supposed to give the results in Arizona. Magically, here's a symposium, going to show it all. Went to China, went to this, went to that. That was all crap. The day of the symposium, they whisked Tina away on the jet to get to the cyber symposium. Magically, the FBI and the guys raid her office that day, and they say she's running a fugitive from away because she knows she did something wrong. Cyber symposium, we're supposed to see all this stuff from all around the world. When it comes to the critical minute to show everything from all around the world, what do we see? We see the guy who's a cyber expert going to show you PCAPs going, oh yeah, they gave me Tina's stuff, and my attorney called me and said maybe that was stolen and I shouldn't talk about it because it was a criminal act. So it announced to the world they had Tina's stuff. He's the guy that released the password online, which was part of the criminal act. We never got the PCAPs, which Mike Lindell mentioned later under 2 years later under court on trial, right, under oath. No, I never had the PCAPs. We never had them, although he said it was. So Tina went to jail for what people said happened, trying to prove theories. However, this con was so sophisticated that they made sure they didn't process Tina under any federal laws. So President Trump can't do anything. It's state law. And then they made sure that they released that exactly 1 month before the last election. And that was the warning shot. The 3,300 county recorders, don't screw this or screw your life. Right. I will be surprised if she gets out early, but it's a battle. But Tina was innocent. Tina did not go to prison for doing her job. Tina went to prison for believing conspiracy bullshit, which, by the way, when you take Dr. Frank's theory that he wanted to test, which sent Tina to prison for 9 years, her husband died, she lost her home, lost her wealth, lost everything, and has been rotting in prison. By the way, we've had incredible mathematicians, some of the best in the world. Look at here's how I came up with the formula, and it has exactly a 1 in 80 billion chance of even being 1% correct. But yet Tina sits rotting in jail. So Crispy Critter, it's very funny you asked that because they turned Tina into what? They're Crispy Critter.
Let's see. Yeah. Cool. Here we are.
all on vaporware, all on statistics. You can go to the Atlantic magazine and read this. It's this whole cast of characters. In every place, it's the same. They tried to do it to Matt DiPerno. Same cast of characters. And you literally say, well, I wanted to try to prove my theory. They promoted them, put them on a 900-city tour, all states. What happened when we're trying to do the Michigan audit, we're trying to do the West Hampton audit, we're going to do Pennsylvania and stuff, that same cast of characters went in and said, don't believe the Arizona audit and Jovan, it's just a grift. Just do canvassing first. And then if you find something, then you can sue, which, by the way, you can't. All of that was a con, 100% of con. It's why they won't face me. It's why I can't get Dr. Frank to come on. Although he just recently said he would come on if I would repent.
Wait, what
I guess I have to disavow being a Messianic Jew, but I have to repent. And then his claim was, well, Jovan wants to do it behind a paywall. Well, you don't pay for Twitter and you don't pay for Rumble. It's absolutely free. So it's all these lies. But if I repent, he being the good Christian man, he will. Praise Jesus. Wait, let me see some scripture. Praise Jesus, scripture. Big, rapper cross on the outside of his shirt to show how Christian it is. That's signaling to you, not to what's real. He'll come on and he'll discuss it. So I'm waiting for him to come on. We got all kinds of mathematicians lined up, some of the best and brightest in the world, to basically explain how this is total bullshit, which, by the way, all these counties flex and still do it, still have them speaking today because the grip still goes.
Well, and
there's your answer for Tina Peters. I love him to death. And by the way, I met with Tina Peters early on, way early on. And after I saw what was going on in the cyber symposium, I said, Tina, you're in a world shit. You're in trouble. And you are in bad hands. All of those guys hovered around her and then made sure she never connected with me, ever.
Well, it's a sick reality, too, that if there is something there, if there was anything that's been so putrefied, it wouldn't matter.
Well, here's the difference. Here, now, and Eve, I'll say this. So, Keith, have you ever updated your phone?
Yes.
Have you ever updated your computer? It says we have to do a scheduled upgrade. What happens? Can you tell me what happens when they go in and update? What happens?
It's downloading stuff and rebooting.
That's right. So it's putting new stuff on, and what else is it doing? Getting rid of old stuff.
Yeah,
right?
Stuff that worked.
That's an update. So they're updating and they're getting rid of old stuff. So an update. By the way, what there were nefarious things, obviously, but in a critical update, you add and you subtract. It's it. You look at all these fantastical reports. Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. It's still, this is what we think happened. And oh, by the way, the file names don't match. Well, why? Because they add and subtract. You know what they can't show you? What votes, what ballots, by whom. But yet everybody believed the Messer report proves it. Well, the guys told you we're doing a critical update, and everybody in the tech industry knows when you do any update, there's things you add and things you subtract. No crime committed under those standards. It makes me sick.
What they should have done, Jovan, tell me if I'm right or wrong on this. What Tina should have done if she had any sort of suspicion is she should have gone to a judge, gotten an injunction, and asked for a copy.
That's right. Tina could have got it. Tina didn't follow protocol. They're on tape telling her, well, we got people can do it. Don't worry. So here's the deal. What are the odds they could take a woman who's very attractive, very smart, her husband's indigent, right? He's in palliative care. Her son, who was a Navy SEAL and happened to die in a tragic accident. What are the odds she'd be that one? They chose her. They targeted her. They convinced her. That is what I think happened.
Well, and this is what causes me to call Jovan about once every 6 months, because, again, I know what we've found. I know what's in the book. I just want to know that it matters, because all of that stuff he's talking about has gone on for so long. It's caught so many headlines. It's got so many people with hopium all over the place. I can't tell you. People don't know my identity, but I can't tell you the people around me that I have sat and had to listen to buzz about this stuff.
Dr. Frank's here.
Oh,
the
my
professor's
God.
here. Which, by the way, any of you guys, Mr. Antifa call infiltrated, come on, let's look at your evidence. Right? The professor, you teach a part-time law class. We can't find any of your prosecution background as a prosecutor. Come on, and let's see what you did in that audit in New Mexico. Let's actually look at your audit. Oh, Dr. Frank, come share with us how you came up with your 6-degree polynomial. Mark Cook, don't have a background, can't verify a background, comes from nowhere. He's one of the common themes. Colonel Sean Smith. None of them will come on and have a head-to-head to go, explain your farm. Explain, a lot of yelling and screaming. Oh, go to my website, go to my website. Let's just come on and discuss it. Oh, tell you what, convince me and I'll repent.
Okay. Any closing thoughts, kids?
I just hope that what we've done makes a difference. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, it has made a difference. It's just at some of the highest levels, not only in the United States and in the world. And this is why with all the people who it's going to turn them into prison bars, it's the machines, it's Dominion, it's all this shit, it's all that. The president of the United States that says, turn over your damn voter rolls. We're going to clean them up. And by the way, you certify every one of them's real. At least the president knows what's going on. It's the same thing. He's been isolated like an island, and the system is trying to win control. And we got to pray to God we make it through this.
Countdown to Chaos. Check out their book. It's important. It's,
this is everything they set in place. Safe. Yeah, it's everything they set in place before 2020 in order to pull it off. It's not about 2020, folks. Yeah. It's everything they set in place to set that countdown to 2020. Yeah.
Right. No, you guys wrote this long before.
That's right.
Election,
that is everything before that was put in place. It reads
like a history book, but instead it was a prophecy, and it sadly came true. I appreciate both of y'all. Eve, Jovan, thanks for making time here. Keep in touch. Let me know if there's ever any good news to report. We'll see y'all 22 hours from now for the Friday live stream. And then, of course, on Wednesday, we've got the Killdozer episode. Thursday, it's part 2 of the Jesus Facts with Dr. Jeremiah Johnston. Thank you for always making time here on At